The stars shone coldly over the battlefield, silent witnesses to the greatest conflict in human history. For centuries, Earth had flourished beneath the blue sky of its homeworld, expanding its reach into the cosmos until one fateful day when it all came to an end. It was supposed to be Earth's greatest triumph, the culmination of years of technological progress and military might. The first wave of humanity's interstellar fleet, an armada of warships, defense drones, and experimental weapons, poised to challenge the might of a galaxy-spanning empire. Against the Empire's vast reach, humanity's fleet was tiny, an insignificant flash in the galactic pan. But that flash was everything to humanity. It represented their defiance, their unyielding spirit, their very survival. They fought with everything they had, defying the odds, pushing back against the empire that had crushed civilizations far older than Earth's own. They fought not just for their homeworld, but for their place in the stars. But in the end, despite their courage and sacrifice, it was not enough. The Empire's forces were endless, their fleets unfathomable, their weaponry beyond anything humanity could comprehend. The Empire had no mercy. Earth's first wave, triumphant in its intentions, was crushed under the weight of the enemy's relentless advance. The human fleet stood no chance against the Empire's overwhelming firepower. Every missile launched, every laser fired, every strategic maneuver, all led to a devastating reality. Humanity had made its first miscalculation. They underestimated the power of the Empire. They were outgunned, outmatched, and ultimately outlasted. The skies above Earth burned with the remnants of the battle. The blackened husks of humanity's last great fleet drifting in the void, silent, as if mocking the tenacity that had led them to this tragic end. The Empire's victory was absolute, leaving Earth broken, battered, and all but forgotten. From the Empire's vantage point, the war was nothing more than a nuisance. The military minds within the Empire, supreme in their arrogance, had anticipated a minor skirmish at best. To them, Earth was just another insignificant world, one among many they had subdued in their pursuit of galactic dominance. They had crushed more advanced civilizations before, and would do so again without so much as a second thought. Their belief was simple. Humanity was nothing special. Earth was just a fledgling world, its people primitive, their technology still crude compared to the vast resources and intelligence of the Empire. What Earth had in spirit, the Empire had in power. Unmatched fleets, advanced weaponry, and a military strategy honed over thousands of years. The war had been brief, a series of engagements marked by sheer firepower and overwhelming force. There was no contest, they believed. Earth's fleet was obliterated. The planet's resistance had been crushed, its forces scattered across the solar system like dust in the wind. The Empire had broken them, their once great cities reduced to rubble. There was no need to worry further about Earth's defiance. The Empire's generals toasted their victory. Another world falls to the might of the Empire, they declared, uncaring of the suffering left in their wake. Earth had been a fleeting challenge, and now, they thought, the galaxy would be secure. What they failed to grasp, what they refused to see, was that humanity was not just a planet. It was an idea. And an idea, once seeded, could not be wiped out by war, by fire, or by the fall of a fleet. They might have broken Earth's first wave, but they had failed to break the spirit of humanity itself. And so, they moved on, as they always did, their arrogance blinding them to the truth. The war was over, they believed, and Earth was finished. But Earth did not crumble in the wake of defeat. No, Earth was changed, forever altered by the bloodshed, but not broken. The loss was staggering, of course. The cities were shattered, entire continents turned to ash, and the once thriving colonies that had spread across the solar system were left as ruins, hollow graves of the dreams they had once held. Earth's population was decimated. Millions, perhaps billions, were lost. Those who survived had to rebuild to pick up the shattered pieces of a world that had been torn apart. The survivors were left to mourn not only the loss of their loved ones, but the loss of their pride. The feeling of helplessness, of being so utterly and completely defeated, was all-consuming. The people of Earth had been the proudest species in the galaxy. They had once believed themselves destined to conquer the stars, to stand shoulder to shoulder with the great civilizations of the universe. But now, they were left in the rubble, crushed under the weight of their own failure. There were whispers among the survivors. They spoke of the arrogance of the Empire, of how they had underestimated humanity's resilience. Yet these whispers were tinged with doubt. They wondered, could they ever rise again? In the years that followed the war, Earth fell into silence. Its government crumbled. Its military forces, what remained of them, were disbanded. The colonies outside the solar system, once filled with humanity's hope for expansion, became deserted, their inhabitants fleeing or perishing in the wake of the Empire's assault. The Earth's only remaining export was fear. It seemed as though humanity's final cry had been swallowed by the void. No one, not even Earth's most enduring advocates, could see a way out. The galaxy had forgotten them. The Empire had no reason to think humanity would rise again. The war was over, and humanity had lost. But in the dark, in the silence that followed the destruction, something stirred. The survivors did not simply lie down and die. They remembered who they were. They remembered the fighters they had once been. The unyielding, stubborn survivors of every calamity that had ever struck them. They remembered that despite all their losses, they had something the Empire could never understand. Hope. Earth was silent. Earth was broken. Earth was presumed to be defeated. But Earth was not finished. Not by a long shot. The second wave was coming, and the Empire would never see it coming. In the quiet aftermath of Earth's first devastating defeat, when the dust settled and the survivors wandered among the ruins, the true story of Earth's resurgence began in the shadows. Far below the surface, in the deepest recesses of humanity's forgotten bunkers, in the remote underground bases abandoned by governments and military leaders alike, the seeds of a new hope were being sown. The war had cost Earth everything. Yet some had refused to accept the end. Those who survived the carnage of the first wave of interstellar battle were not simply mourners. They were the quiet architects of humanity's second chance. A scattered collection of rogue scientists, ex-military officers, engineers, and even some of the brightest minds Earth had ever produced came together in secrecy. Some were hiding in plain sight, disguised among the populations of cities that still remained intact. Others had been forced to the edges of society, where they lived in the shadow of the Empire's dominance. They had been labeled as traitors, radicals, and outcasts, their voices silenced in the aftermath of defeat. But to those few who had the will to survive, these outcasts had become the core of something far greater. A movement, a cause that could restore humanity's rightful place among the stars. Among them was Dr. Elias Harker, a once renowned scientist whose revolutionary work on artificial intelligence and deep space navigation had made him a target during the war. He had watched helplessly as the Empire's forces decimated his colleagues, leaving him to vanish into hiding. With him were a group of surviving engineers, led by the no-nonsense Captain Renner Lee, a former commander in Earth's once glorious fleet. The captain's eyes, once filled with pride, had hardened into something far more dangerous. A cold, calculating resolve that pushed her and her team through the darkest times. There was also Aiden Tanaka, an ex-soldier whose family had been lost in the early phases of the war. His rage had burned through the years of silence like a steady flame, leading him to seek out the scattered survivors. The underground bases, hidden beneath the mountains of old Earth and even in abandoned mining colonies on distant moons, became the breeding grounds for Earth's last hope. It was here, beneath the surface, that the second wave was forged. Not with sheer power, but with precision, stealth, and the relentless drive for survival. They knew that brute force would not win them this war. The Empire had proven that. No, what they needed was something smarter, something more adaptable. And so, they began to craft a new kind of warfare. Where Earth's first fleet had relied on brute force, massive warships heavily armored and equipped with powerful but conventional weapons, the second wave would be different. They had learned from their failures. They had studied the Empire's strategies, their weapons, their technology. They knew that if they were to survive, they would have to adapt in ways the Empire could not foresee. The engineers and scientists worked tirelessly, harnessing the broken remnants of humanity's old technology and blending it with new, experimental ideas that could give them an edge. The old, crumbling communication satellites were repurposed into stealth transmission nodes, capable of sending encrypted signals across vast distances without detection. Earth survivors developed cutting-edge cloaking technology, rendering their ships nearly invisible to enemy sensors. They had also managed to tap into the power of advanced AI, allowing them to devise strategies and tactics that were terrifying in their precision. What set the second wave apart was its adaptability. They weren't just creating new weapons or ships, they were designing a new way of war. Smaller, more mobile ships equipped with quantum disruptors, capable of disabling entire fleets with a single strike. Adaptive nanotechnology that could heal ships and soldiers alike, making them harder to defeat. Drones, once considered simple tools for reconnaissance, of infiltrating the Empire's defenses without a single shot being fired. Their strategy was clear. No more fighting in the open, no more direct assaults. The Empire had beaten them at that game. Instead, the second wave would strike in the shadows. They would be a ghost, an invisible force that tore at the Empire's heart without ever revealing itself. It would be a war of attrition, a war where the Empire's greatest strength, its size and sheer numbers, became its greatest weakness. The survivors weren't fighting to win every battle. They were fighting to survive long enough to bring down the Empire's insidious hold on the galaxy. As the survivors gathered in the depths of their hidden bases, the true power behind their determination became clear. This was not just about victory. It was not about revenge, even though many of them had lost so much. This was about survival, about ensuring that Earth would not be forgotten, that humanity would rise again. Captain Rena Lee, who had once commanded fleets of ships, now commanded a new generation of warriors. Not soldiers of war, but survivors who would stop at nothing to protect what was left of their home. Her face was worn from the years of hiding, the weight of countless failures pressing on her shoulders, but in her eyes was something that had not been extinguished in the ashes of Earth's fall. The will to fight. She had lost everything, her family, her comrades, her planet, but she had not lost her heart. Every decision she made was for the people who could no longer speak for themselves. Dr. Ilyas Harker's motivations were equally personal. He had once been at the forefront of Earth's greatest technological advancements. Now, he was the creator of a new kind of weapon. A weapon of survival. A weapon that could ensure Earth's future. His grief was hidden beneath layers of scientific rigor, but beneath the cold logic of his mind burned a quiet rage. The Empire had wiped out his colleagues, destroyed his research, they had stolen his family, and the fire to take back what had been lost burned brighter in him than any machine he could build. Aiden Tanaka, a man whose soul had been shattered by the loss of his wife and child, found his purpose in this underground rebellion. He was no longer the soldier who fought for glory. He was a man who fought for the memory of those he loved. Every weapon he built, every strategy he helped devise, was infused with a single thought: to make sure their deaths were not in vain. Flashbacks haunted them all. The laughter of children on Earth's bustling streets, the warmth of family gatherings, the sense of pride that once coursed through humanity's veins, gone in an instant. But as they sat together in the darkened chambers of their underground base, surrounded by maps and blueprints, they found a new kind of hope. This war was not one they could win in a single stroke, but it was one they could win, piece by piece, strategy by strategy. The whispers began to spread across the galaxy like wildfire, passed between the surviving colonies, exchanged by the few who still had hope. A dying colony, once thought abandoned, flickered back to life. A distress beacon, buried beneath the surface of a forgotten world, came to life with a single message. It was a whisper, a promise, a threat. To the Empire, it would seem like a mirage, an illusion of hope from a defeated species. But to those who still remembered the fire of humanity's spirit, it was a beacon, a call to arms, a rallying cry that could not be ignored. The second wave was coming, and the Empire would soon learn that they had underestimated humanity once again. The Empire's core sectors, once considered impenetrable, had become the perfect hunting grounds. The Empire's leaders sat in their palatial command centers, resting easy in the belief that humanity was no more than a distant memory, a minor nuisance long erased from the galaxy's consciousness. In the shadows, however, Earth's second wave was preparing to shatter that illusion. In the dead of night, far beyond the reach of the Empire's sensors and warships, human ships, sleek, almost ghostly in their design, emerged from the black void. They were no longer the lumbering, heavily armored vessels of the first wave. These ships were smaller, faster, and covered in cloaking technology that rendered them virtually invisible to the Empire's detection systems. They slid into the Empire's core sectors unnoticed, slipping through the tightest security as if they were part of the fabric of space itself. The ships, crafted from the combined genius of Earth's finest minds, glided silently through the blackness of space. Each one was equipped with cloaking devices, stolen from the Empire's own technologies, adapted and improved upon by Earth scientists. They were the ghosts of a world that had been cast aside, sent to strike at the heart of the very Empire that had tried to snuff them out. No alarms were sounded, no fleets were dispatched. By the time the Empire realized what was happening, it was already too late. The first wave of attacks was precise, devastating, and coordinated with terrifying efficiency. Unlike the direct confrontation of the first wave, which had been an all-out assault on the Empire's military might, the second wave used a different tactic: guerrilla warfare. They didn't want to meet the Empire head-on. They knew they couldn't win that way. Instead, they would strike at the heart of the Empire's infrastructure, bringing its might to its knees without ever showing their faces. Strategic strikes began to hit vital Imperial infrastructure: supply lines, military facilities, and communication hubs. The cloaked ships infiltrated deep into the Empire's heart, unleashing devastating cyber attacks on their AI systems, causing confusion and disarray. The Empire's greatest strength, its advanced AI network that controlled entire fleets and war zones, was suddenly rendered useless. Critical data was scrambled and fleets were stranded in space, unable to respond to the attacks. But it didn't stop there. The second wave targeted the Empire's hidden cloning vats, the factories where the genetic elite were created. Soldiers bred for nothing more than war. Without warning, high-powered quantum disruptors were unleashed, melting the vats and vaporizing the massive underground production facilities. These were the tools the Empire had used to create their army, but now they were reduced to rubble. Each attack was swift, brutal, and planned with surgical precision. They weren't simply seeking to kill. They were cutting off the lifeblood of the Empire, severing the systems that allowed it to function. Every blow was a step closer to crippling the Empire, forcing it to fight with one arm tied behind its back. The Empire's military machine, once a juggernaut that could crush planets beneath its heels, was left in chaos, trying to respond to an enemy that they didn't even know existed. Back at the Empire's command center, the mood was shifting from confident to uncertain. Imperial generals who had spent years basking in the glow of victory suddenly found themselves at a loss. The attacks came without warning, their coordination unlike anything the Empire had seen before. They had believed Earth to be primitive, a broken species, unable to offer anything more than resistance that could be easily quashed. They had underestimated the resilience of humanity. Panic began to set in. A series of reports flooded in, each more alarming than the last. Cloning facilities destroyed, supply chains severed, communications jammed. There were no signs of Earth's forces, no ships, no fleets. Just whispers of destruction, spreading across the Empire like wildfire. The Empire's military leaders, once unshakable in their confidence, scrambled to organize a defense, but it was clear they were unprepared for this kind of war. What they had failed to grasp was simple. Earth had evolved. Their warships weren't just hiding in the shadows, they had become shadows themselves. Humanity had learned from their defeat, and now they were ruthless. They no longer fought for pride or glory, they fought for survival. And survival had given them a different kind of strength. One the Empire had never anticipated. The Empire's systems, once perfect and seamless, began to crack under the pressure. They had expected Earth's second wave to be a distant, disjointed response. Instead, they were facing something smarter, quicker, and infinitely more dangerous. The tables had turned. The Empire, in its blind overconfidence, had given Earth's survivors the opportunity to strike at the core of its power. And then, in the midst of the chaos, a name began to emerge. A legend was born. Commander Rael, a former officer of the First Wave, had once led human fleets with tactical brilliance and a fierce sense of duty. Though she had watched the destruction of Earth from the shadows, she had never lost hope. When the Second Wave's resistance had begun to take shape, she was one of the first to volunteer for the front lines. Now she stood at the head of a small but deadly strike team, preparing to launch an attack that would send shockwaves through the Empire. Rael's team had been tasked with infiltrating one of the Empire's largest war factories, a massive facility responsible for producing the warships that dominated the galaxy. It was a heavily fortified location, surrounded by defense grids and guarded by elite troops. It seemed impossible, but Commander Rael had never been one to shy away from impossible odds. The attack was set to begin at the heart of the Empire's territory, deep within a system that was thought to be the most secure. With a stealth ship cloaked in the shadows, Commander Rael and her team approached the factory undetected. They moved with precision, infiltrating the facility through hidden access points. Inside, they planted explosives at key structural points, targeting the factory's power cores. The mission was risky, but failure was not an option. As the countdown began, the tension was palpable. This was it. The first major strike from Earth's second wave. The explosion was nothing short of catastrophic. The massive war factory, a symbol of the Empire's dominance, erupted into a ball of fire and debris. For the first time since the defeat of the first wave, the Empire felt the sting of their own vulnerability. The war factory was gone. Commander Rael's team had struck at the heart of the Empire, and the consequences would be far-reaching. As the team made their escape, Rael stood on the bridge of the cloaked ship, watching the explosion ripple through space. This was more than just a military victory. This was the moment when Earth's survivors, once thought broken, had made their return. And the Empire would never be the same. The Empire had never expected to be challenged like this. Their initial response was one of arrogance and disbelief, but as the frequency of attacks increased, they were forced to confront the harsh reality. Earth's second wave was real. It was no longer a scattered group of survivors hiding in the shadows. It had become a unified force, using guerrilla tactics and high-tech weaponry to strike at the heart of the Empire's infrastructure. In response, the Empire mobilized everything they had. Fleet after fleet, filled with elite soldiers and high-powered warships, was deployed to crush the rebellion. Their commanders, once confident and dismissive of the human threat, now spoke in tones of desperation. The Empire's forces, vast and seemingly invincible, were unleashed with full force, their weapons aimed at eradicating every trace of humanity's resurgence. But despite their overwhelming numbers and technological advantage, the Empire's retaliation was brutal and ineffective. Earth's second wave had already proven it could operate in the shadows. No longer would they meet the Empire's brute force with raw power. Instead, they had developed a methodical, relentless approach that left the Empire reeling. Every major attack by the Empire was met with calculated counterattacks, designed to exploit weaknesses and turn the tide in Earth's favor. The Empire sent fleets of warships into deep space, hoping to overwhelm humanity with sheer numbers. But Earth's forces, using cloaking technology and AI-assisted tactics, outmaneuvered them at every turn. Imperial warships, once unbeatable, found themselves blindsided by small, agile human ships that struck with pinpoint precision. Each battle was a lesson in tactical superiority. Where the Empire had relied on overwhelming power, Earth now relied on brains and adaptability. The battles were swift, vicious, and, time after time, Earth emerged victorious. Still, the Empire refused to acknowledge the growing strength of the human resistance. Their arrogance had led them to believe that their sheer size and firepower could win any battle. They were wrong. The Empire's overconfidence blinded them to one simple truth. Earth had evolved. The first wave of humanity's fleet had been crushed by brute force, but this new wave was different. The tactics were smarter, faster, and far more dangerous. As the war raged on and the Empire's retaliation grew more desperate, something unexpected began to happen. Other oppressed species, those subjugated by the Empire and forced to live under its brutal rule, began to take notice of Earth's resurgence. Whispers of humanity's resilience spread through the galaxy. Earth had been a beacon, a symbol of resistance against an empire that had destroyed countless worlds and civilizations. Now, the oppressed species of the galaxy saw an opportunity to rise up against their oppressors. It started small. Disparate groups of rebels and freedom fighters from across the galaxy reached out to Earth's forces. Some were former slaves, others were once mighty civilizations reduced to rubble by the Empire's relentless expansion. They were tired of living in fear, tired of being subjugated by an empire that cared nothing for their lives. They wanted freedom, and they saw that humanity, against all odds, had sparked the fire of rebellion. Earth's second wave, now joined by these new allies, became more than just a military force. It became a symbol. To those who had lost everything to the Empire's tyranny, humanity's resurgence was a rallying cry. It was a signal that the Empire could be beaten, that the galaxy could be liberated. The once distant dream of a united front against the Empire began to take shape as new alliances were formed. Together, Earth and its newfound allies built a coalition that was as diverse as it was determined. Every species, every fighter brought something unique to the table. Knowledge, weapons, and strategies that Earth's second wave could use to take the fight to the Empire's doorstep. What had started as a lone human resistance had now grown into a powerful coalition of freedom fighters. The Empire's borders, once unbreachable, were now under siege from multiple fronts. The tide was beginning to turn, and the Empire could feel it. Earth's second wave was not only surviving, it was thriving. The technology Earth's scientists and engineers had developed was beyond anything the Empire had encountered before. The AI-assisted tactics they used were cutting edge, allowing them to predict the movements of enemy fleets and outmaneuver them with terrifying efficiency. The days of massive space battles where ships clashed in grand displays of firepower were over. Earth's forces had adopted a new form of warfare, small, fast, and incredibly precise. Drones, once used for reconnaissance, were now powerful weapons of war. These drones were not the mindless machines of the past. They were controlled via neural links, allowing human commanders to direct them with their thoughts. These drones could infiltrate enemy ships, disable their weapons, and assassinate high-ranking officials without a single shot being fired. Dogfights in space, once dominated by the Empire's superior firepower, were now Earth's domain. Pilots, once limited by their physical and mental limitations, were now augmented by AI systems that allowed them to think and react faster than ever before. Earth's pilots, using these advanced systems, could engage in high-speed combat with unparalleled precision, dodging enemy fire and launching devastating attacks in the blink of an eye. The Empire's fleet, unable to adapt to this new style of combat, found itself outclassed at every turn. But it wasn't just in space where Earth's forces excelled. The second wave had perfected the art of cyber warfare. Earth's hackers infiltrated the Empire's command systems, sending chaos through their ranks. With a few keystrokes, they could disable entire fleets, scramble communications, and send false orders that led the Empire's forces into traps. It was a war of information as much as it was a war of firepower, and Earth's forces were masters of it. Earth's tactical superiority wasn't just about advanced technology, it was about adaptability. While the Empire had relied on static strategies and brute force, Earth's forces had learned to adapt, to evolve, and to fight smarter. They had learned from their mistakes in the first wave, and now they were using that knowledge to dismantle the Empire piece by piece. Amidst the chaos and the growing tide of resistance, there was one moment that stood out, one that captured the essence of Earth's resurgence. It was a moment of personal victory, one that would resonate with every human and ally in the galaxy. Aiden Tanaka, once a soldier in the first wave, had been haunted by the loss of his wife and child during the Empire's initial assault. Their deaths had driven him to the edge of madness, and it was that rage, that pain, that had propelled him into the underground resistance. He had been fighting for survival, but now, in this moment, he fought for something deeper. Revenge. The target was clear, the Empire's flagship, the vessel responsible for the destruction of his family, the same ship that had unleashed the attack that decimated Earth's first fleet. It was a symbol of everything that had been lost. For years, Tanaka had lived with the anger, the helplessness, the weight of that loss. But now, standing in the midst of Earth's second wave, he had a chance to make it right. Under the cover of darkness, Tanaka led a small team on a daring assault. They infiltrated the flagship, moving like shadows through the halls, avoiding detection by the Empire's advanced security systems. As they reached the command center, Tanaka found the man who had ordered the attack, the officer who had signed the death warrants for his family. The officer stood there, arrogant, unaware of the storm about to hit him. In a flash, Tanaka struck. The officer, once untouchable, now lay on the cold steel floor. The revenge was complete, but it wasn't just for Tanaka. It was for every human, every ally, who had lost something to the Empire's cruelty. With the officer's death, the Empire's command was thrown into chaos. The flagship was now vulnerable, and Earth's forces, aided by Tanaka's actions, took full advantage. The personal victory had become a symbolic one, a reminder that the fight was no longer about survival. It was about taking back everything the Empire had stolen. The tides were turning. The Empire's grip on the galaxy was weakening, and humanity, once thought defeated, was now unleashed, fighting for freedom, for justice, and for the future of every species under the Empire's boot. The final confrontation loomed large, like a storm gathering over a world that had already weathered too many. Earth's second wave, now a formidable coalition of human forces and their newfound allies, had pressed the Empire to the brink. The Empire's vast military apparatus, once invincible and confident, was stretched thin across the galaxy, unable to keep up with the relentless onslaught of guerrilla strikes, cyber attacks, and precisely coordinated sabotage. Now, the time had come for the final battle. The heart of the Empire, its central command hub, a massive, heavily fortified space station located in the heart of their capital system, was the target. The battle for this station would determine the fate of the galaxy. For Earth's forces, this wasn't just a military strike. This was a moment of reckoning. It was the last stand, where every victory and every loss led to this point. The space station loomed ahead, a massive construct of steel and energy surrounded by fleets of Imperial warships. Thousands of enemy vessels, each one a symbol of the Empire's vast power, awaited the final showdown. It was a confrontation that would tear through the stars, one that would leave no corner of the galaxy untouched. Commander Rail, standing at the helm of the flagship, felt the weight of the mission pressing down on her. Her hands gripped the command chair, but her mind was elsewhere, on the millions of lives lost, on the hope that had been rekindled, and on the sacrifices of the brave souls who had made this moment possible. This wasn't just about taking down a station or destroying fleets. This was about sending a message. Earth had risen, and it would never be silenced again. Hayden Tanaka, standing beside her, clutched a photograph of his lost family, a reminder of why they were fighting. His rage had been a fire that fueled the second wave's drive. But now, in the face of the final battle, that fire had become a quiet resolve. He was no longer fighting for revenge alone. He was fighting for the future, for his daughter's future, for every life that would be free once the Empire was shattered. The final strike began with a brutal flurry of activity. The human fleet, equipped with their advanced cloaking technology, moved in, invisible and deadly. The Empire had no idea they were coming until it was too late. Ships exploded in space as Earth's forces launched their devastating barrage of quantum disruptors, disabling the Empire's fleet and leaving them open to attack. The battle raged on, and the Empire, now aware of the danger, threw everything it had into defense. Heavy bombardments rained down on Earth's forces. Thousands of ships clashed in an explosion of light and metal, with fighters weaving in and out of the chaos, dodging blasts, engaging in dogfights. The screams of dying ships echoed through the space lanes. Explosions erupted as Earth's second wave fought with everything they had, every soldier, every fighter, and every ship pushing forward with a singular purpose: to see the end of the Empire. But the cost of victory was high. Ships were lost, men and women fell in battle, and the darkness of space became littered with the debris of countless fallen heroes. Yet, even in the face of overwhelming odds, Earth's forces pushed forward. The station's defenses began to crack. The Empire's fleet faltered as Earth's precision strikes targeted critical weak points. Each moment of loss only fueled the resolve of the second wave. Through the smoke and chaos, Commander Rail led the final assault on the central command station, her ship pushing ahead with a force and determination unmatched by anything the Empire had anticipated. The station's defenses, once formidable, were falling apart. Human fighters infiltrated its core, breaching the station's inner sanctum, and within moments, the Empire's command was thrown into chaos. Earth's forces were inside, but the fall of the Empire wasn't just through violence. The war they had waged, their insatiable hunger for power, had been built on a foundation of fear and domination. It was an ideology that had, for centuries, ruled over countless worlds and species, but now it was crumbling. Not just from the outside, but from within. As Earth's forces tore through the heart of the Empire, they also shattered its core belief that the galaxy belonged to them and to no one else. The idea of a universal order, where the Empire controlled everything and everyone, was exposed for what it truly was: a brittle, hollow structure that could not withstand the fires of resistance. The first cracks in the Empire's foundation were revealed in the final moments of the battle. Rebel factions, inspired by humanity's unyielding spirit, turned on their Imperial overlords. The Empire's vassal worlds, long subdued under the weight of Imperial power, began to rise up. As Earth's forces pushed through the command station, the Empire's subjugated species rebelled. The very idea that the Empire could continue to rule through fear was undone. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's people began to question their leaders. Soldiers, once loyal to the Empire, now saw the truth. It wasn't Earth that had fallen, it was the Empire itself. The resistance was no longer just about fighting for survival. It was about freedom, about equality, and about breaking the chains that had bound the galaxy for so long. As the final wave of attacks rained down, and the last of the Empire's strongholds crumbled beneath Earth's relentless charge, Commander Rail stood amidst the destruction. She spoke into the comms, her voice calm but filled with the weight of what had just transpired. They thought Earth had fallen. They thought we were broken. They forgot. Humans don't break. We adapt, we endure. And when we rise as one. Her words resonated not only across the battlefield, but throughout the galaxy. It was a message not just to the Empire, but to every world, every species, every individual who had ever been oppressed by the weight of tyranny. Humanity had done what no one thought possible. They had brought down an empire. With the fall of the Empire's central command, the galaxy's long night began to end. The explosions in space began to subside, the debris of battle drifting slowly into the void. In the silence that followed, Earth's ships remained victorious. But the cost was clear. The price of freedom was high, and the galaxy would never forget the sacrifices that had been made to bring it about. As Earth's fleet soared through the stars, banners of the new alliance waved in the void, their designs a symbol of unity and resistance. The flags of the liberated worlds, free at last from the Empire's tyranny, joined together as one. Humanity, once thought crushed and forgotten, was now the symbol of a new beginning. And as the survivors of the war stood together, watching the banners rise, they understood something fundamental. This wasn't the end. It was humanity's beginning. With the Empire's fall, the galaxy would never be the same. The old order had been destroyed, but a new one was rising. One built on the ideals of freedom, unity, and equality. And Earth, once devastated and forgotten, was now leading the charge. As Earth's fleet sailed off into the unknown, with the stars spread out before them, Rail's voice echoed one final time. This was not the end. This was humanity's beginning. The future was theirs.